Well, great. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to come out and speak with this wonderful group of common Americans united to inspire our nation. What a wonderful name. I hope that I'm kind of living up to that with what I'm doing and the mission that I am on right now. Now, before I get too far along in the presentation, two things to ask. One, how's the sound? Good. Okay, so we got the right distance from the mouth. The other thing I have to do is I have to introduce my wife back here, Deb Bowers, who is the other half of this campaign. Well, it's great to be back in the good state of North Carolina. It is, in fact, the state that I grew up in. I grew up there in Furnitureland, High Point, North Carolina, and was blessed to be able to go to East Carolina University, from which I graduated in 1976. But while I was there, I went through the Reserve Officer Training Corps program with the Air Force, and was blessed to be able to be commissioned in the Air Force following a turbulent time. That was the end of now I say a turbulent time, in fact, that the war came to end and turbulent for the military, because we saw a big reduction in force at that point in time. And among 100 cadets that I started with 4 years earlier, only 12 of us got to be commissioned as officers in the Air Force from ROTC at East Carolina that year. So I was very blessed to do that. I've been blessed too to have lived in 6 different nations around the world, visited many more of those. Some of them shot at me. Most of them didn't, thank goodness. Thank goodness for that. Retired in 2006. My principal job in the Air Force was that of a navigator, electronic warfare officer, and I flew mostly fighter aircraft, primarily the F-4. I was blessed too, though, to teach at what we call our Top Gun school. Most people are familiar with that term, Top Gun, at Nellis Air Force Base. For 5 years. There was some of our graduate fighter pilots, if you will. And while I was blessed to be able to fly the F-15.
I knew this would happen.
Okay.
This matters.
I was supposed to be able to fly the F-15 and the F-16 quite a bit while I was there. Again, retired in 2006 after 30 years in the military and absolutely loved every minute of it. I only left because they said your time is up. Otherwise, I'd probably still be there. Business, as you well know, has been very good for the military for a number of years now. Maybe more so than most of us would like. Well, following that retirement in 2006, we were living in Destin, Florida, on the other coast of Florida, Northwest Florida, as a matter of fact. And I put together my own little business, Technical Training Corporation, in which I provided training back to the military. All right, we're back at it. Back to the military and defense industry, specific to radar, countermeasures, and infrared systems. My specialty was surface-to-air missile systems, which a lot of people are interested in today just because of what has recently happened with the Malaysia flight being down by what we believe at this point in time was an SA-11. I'm very, very familiar with that system, and the one that was a precursor to it, the SA-6, which I've had an opportunity to do battle with those during the Operation Desert Storm back in 1990. Well, during the course of about 2006 to 2009, I was introduced to something called the fair tax. Anybody here familiar with the term fair tax? Okay, a national retail sales tax. And the way I became familiar with that was by reading one of 2 books that John Linder and Neil Bortz wrote together. I actually read the second book called Truth, the Fair Tax. And that really opened my eyes at that point in my life, being in my own business at that point, about taxation, something that probably many people take for granted. And I certainly took it for granted, as many of us do, until it starts to impact us more directly and what that really means. So I kind of put my name out there with Americans for Fair Taxation, which was based out of Houston, Texas at that time, to say, hey, I would like to be a community organizer and get involved in the fair tax. Not the community organizer he's laughing at over here, but something where we can enlighten people as to what's going on in taxation out there and how we might do a better job of taxes. Well, I was contacted by a gentleman by the name of Mark Gupton down in Florida, where that was the state I was still in at that point in time, that invited me to join with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association, which became a big nonprofit group. They've got about 44,000 people down there in Florida that support the fair tax on a fairly regular basis. And in fact, the state of Florida in May became the first state to have their legislature passed by both the Senate and the General Assembly to send a letter to the President of the United States, to the Speaker of the House, and to the President of the Senate, telling them in Memorial 118, which is a resolution that the state of Florida will no longer support a federal income, payroll, and corporate tax system, that they will only support in the future a national retail sales tax as is presented today in House Bill H.R. 25 and its companion bill S-122 that is in the Senate. That is historic. And there's a lot of other states that are trying to get on board with this idea of promoting only a national retail sales tax. I believe here in the state of North Carolina that your legislature is starting to look more and more at the idea of going with a sales tax only. Well, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the national retail sales tax, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. Well, in 2010, I and my wife were blessed to be able to sell our home while there was still a huge housing problem going on in Florida. And we bought a diesel motor coach and we set out cross country for 2 years, and we traveled back and forth 2 times over those 2 years across the United States. And while we were traveling, something just started edging at me. There was a calling, if you will, that I needed to start looking at more than just taxes, where I'd spent a lot of focus for about 2 years at that point in time. And what I was called to start looking at was things like Medicare, Social Security, the debt, the economy, immigration, all those issues that seem to be impacting our nation today that we have such great concern about. So I did in early 2010, and I sat down with that computer. That's the luxury of computers, you know. Anywhere you go these days, you've got your office with you. We could travel around the country and do that. Well, I started studying these other issues, and I started looking at what are we doing now, where's that going now, and what could we do that would be better for the nation, but be better in the sense that it would be driving us back towards our Constitution instead of away from our Constitution and the values that it represents. So I spent, I guess, the better part of about 1.5 years to 2 years writing out my ideas and new ideas on how to approach that. I'm not one of those that in this campaign that you're going to hear get up and criticize. I want new ideas. If you're going to criticize, then you need to debate or criticize the current idea, but you need to present your own. And that's what my focus was. And then in late 2012, I put this information that I had collected together into a website. And little did I know, really, at that point in time, that what I had created was a platform. But it was a platform that I was called to share with the American people. Not that I had the right answer in every case, but that I was making a move to look at new ideas as opposed to continuing to look at old ideas. That calling led eventually to saying, well, what's the office that you're going to be able to get this message out in? It's not going to be as a congressman. It's not going to be as a senator. It's going to be running for president. And you can just imagine yourself. How would you feel if you suddenly had the notion that you're going to run for president of the United States? Someone that has never run for an office before. Did you know that if I were elected, I would not be the first president to have had that ability to come to office not having been tainted by prior politics? There have been 2 other presidents. One of them was Ulysses S. Grant, and the other one this man just said here, Eisenhower. However, Eisenhower and Grant had quite a bit of notoriety from their military. You'd never heard of Kerry before you got introduced to him tonight, probably. But I have one thing that they don't have. Do you know what that is? The internet. The internet. And you know, Christian over here was apologizing for a small group tonight. I'd have been here and talked if it was just him. Okay? You know, they say that we're all just 6 degrees away from being able to reach everybody in the world. I think that's been refuted now. But I've got more than 12 here, so I'm going to be able to double that to reach everybody in the world tonight. But anyhow, what I ended up having there was a platform. And a calling that to do that would require me to run for president. And I set out looking to see what it would take to run for president. And you'd be surprised how simple the process is. And I just want to go to that with you real quick.
4 basic steps to run for president of the United States. Most of them are the same as what you'll find for a congressman or a senator running for federal office. Bless you. Number 1, you have to have expended or taken in donations $5,000. I'm going to tell you right now, my wife and I do not take donations except for the one all of you have given to me right now. And that's the most valuable thing that you will ever give me. And that's a bit of the finite time that you have on this earth to allow me to speak to you and hopefully share something with you that I think is going to be important from this day forward. So, back up here, what was that up here? 4 things. 4 things. We talked about the first, and that's the 5,000. The second thing is, and the government does things kind of backwards, we know that. Federal Election Commission forms. Form 1 and Form 2. You do Form 2 first. Okay? Form 2, 1 page. That page is your name, your address that you're going to be using for your office while you're running, there for your campaign, the name of your campaign committee, sign it. Send it in. You have to do that within 10 days of having achieved the $5,000. Ladies and gentlemen, this concerns me. Nowhere in that registration process did I have to swear or affirm that I met the constitutional qualifications of a president of the United States to become president. Those qualifications are you have to be 35 years of age, 14 years a resident of this nation, and a natural born citizen. I did not have to make a statement that I met those qualifications. Therefore, I cannot be held accountable for having applied to become a candidate for the President of the United States. That's Form 2. The next form is Form 1. It's got to be sent in within 15 days. And in that form, all you're doing is designating again your principal campaign committee, any other authorized committees, the name of the bank that's going to be handling your campaign finances, and send it in. You can actually go to fec.gov, put in 2016 presidential candidates, Form 2 and Form 1 filers. You can see the very form that I sent in. It's been photocopied, and it has an envelope with it. I, along with, you're talking about the ballots and getting everybody's name on it. The last time I looked, there was 90 presidential candidates for 2016. 27 of them are Republican. 90, that is correct. 90, 27 of them are Republicans. So you can have a really huge ballot if everybody got on the ballot. And if we made it very easy in each one of the states to do so. The last of the 4 things I had to do was file Form 678 with the Office of Government Ethics. And that basically is detailing what I have in terms of IRA bank accounts and that sort of thing. I'm not an extremely wealthy man by any means. I consider my wealth to be my beautiful wife and my family. So that was all of about 1 page of 4 pages that really got filled out and sent in. And now I are an official candidate as President of the United States. Now, it's simple to get into the registration process and get your name out there, but there's a lot of work to be done before you end up on a ballot in each one of the states at some point in the future. But before you do that, you got to have a plan. Actually, even before you do that, you got to have a passion. I have the passion. My passion has been with my nation as long as I can remember. And I had that passion throughout my military service, and it's carried over into my life after service. And with that passion, I've developed what I think is the second thing, and that is a plan. Now, how many of you, by any chance, already seen my website? Just to raise your hands, since it's a small group, a couple of folks. All right? You're going to find on your tables a card that I put out there, and if you don't have one, we're going to make sure that you get one. Let me hand one over here to these gentlemen. This is a card, and you can tell I'm a conservative because I don't have this great big brochure for you. I have just a small business card. On the front of the card, it has my name, and down at the bottom it has one of my 4 websites. All 4 of the websites actually point to the same, all 4 of the domains there also point to the same website. But on the back of that card, you're going to find something I call 10 Steps to Restore America's Blessings. I'm going to talk about this very briefly here in just a moment. But one of the things that I want to point out to you is, please, go and take a look at their website. It's now about 3 years, almost 4 years in the making. And it is unlike any other presidential candidate presentation that has ever been put together in the past. Why? Because I think I have revealed to you, at least I hope I have, where I see us as a nation today, where I believe we need to go as a nation, and exactly how I propose that we get there. A lot of those elements sometimes are missing from our presidential candidates. When you first go to my website and you open up to the homepage at the very top, is you're going to see something I was inspired to put in there, and it's my campaign theme, and it says, "Restore America's blessings." Those that have been too eroded. And the blessings I'm talking about are those that are Creator endowed, that have been reclaimed for each of us by the blood of patriots through many battles that this nation has fought, and that was to be secured for each of us within our Constitution. The blessings, of course, that I'm talking about are those of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You know, the pursuit of happiness was actually kind of a change under the founders from what they had been taught. It was estate, property. One of the things that we're seeing more and more of being challenged and taken away from us are government deciding how we may use our property. You know, sometimes I wish that had been put in there so we're more mindful of exactly what, we were fighting for in that Declaration of Independence and what we secured within our Constitution. Now, as you go down my homepage, the very next banner that's going to jump out at you is one that says, "Setting the Standard for 2016 Presidential Candidates." Now, I'm not talking about a standard of character. Wonderful. There you go. Hey, there you go. He's right with it. You can see it right as it comes down. I'm not talking about a standard of character. What I am talking about there is a standard of campaigning. I think too often in campaigns, you're going to find that you're given generalities or criticisms of the opponent. Certainly not specifics. So what I have said in my campaign, my focus is on specificity, not generalities. Now, when I'm talking about a standard, is this something that Kerry Bowers can set? No, it's not. I can put it out there for you. What I've done in terms of having a very specific and a very detailed plan. But it's really going to be up to each and every one of you to make it the standard, because you're going to say that if Kerry Bowers can come out of right field, put together this plan, having never been involved in government before, but new ideas, then you, Mr. or Ms. Candidate, I'm holding you to the same level of expectation. If you cannot present me a plan and tell me exactly how you propose to drive this nation back to the Constitution from which it has for too long and too far departed, then you either need to get back to work on a plan or you are absolutely out of consideration. No more generalities. We had a young lady that was running, we were blessed to be able to be in New Orleans for the Republican Leadership Conference back at the end of May. We had a young lady there that was running to replace her dad's position, Bill Cassidy, in Congress out of Louisiana. And she came, and she and her husband came over, and we talked quite a bit about my campaign and how specific I was. And she said, "My strategist told me not to be specific." Of course not. He's exactly right. Why? Why? Well, first of all, I think you're exhibiting some level of irresponsibility to not tell the people what you intend to do, and then you deny them the opportunity of holding you accountable for not doing what you said you were going to do. And unfortunately, that's the strategy in politics. Don't tell them what you're really going to do. And even more important, don't do like Kerry Bowers and put it in writing. Okay? And many times you're going to find that not only have I put it in writing on that website, but I've turned around, as you probably saw there a moment ago, and it's in videos, where I have given you the opportunity to look me right in the eye, straight to my heart, and see exactly what I intend to do. I want you to see the conviction that I have to execute the plan that I have laid out. And as an old aviator, I can tell you I have some pretty strong conviction, okay, to get the job done. The latest video I put up there, I think is one that you're never going to see anybody do. It's called A Presidential Candidate's Perspective on the Inauguration and Beyond. I have laid out what I would anticipate on the inaugural day and what you can anticipate in a routine for me for the next 4 years, that I would be blessed to be, not what I like to call the president all the time, but blessed to be your executive servant, someone from the people, for the people, and never above the people. Your servant. Your servant. And that's what we forget too often. Thank you for that. Now, those 10 steps that you have on the back of your card, there's a video out there that I put together. It's 12 minutes long that goes through each of those 10 steps. So if I brush through them real quick, you can go right back and take a look at that video. Or you're going to have the blessing of YouTube here too. You know, it's something that you'd like to go back and see what I said here. The first one that is restore the federal character of government. Our government was set up to have a balance between a federal character and a national character. Well, we have an overreaching national character. A lot of that overreach was brought about through the 17th Amendment when we eliminated the Senate of the United States. Instead, we created 100 more representatives that essentially have 435% the popular voting power of the House of Representatives. The Senate's gone. The Senate was to have a federal character. They were to represent the states, not individuals and select groups out there. So how do we get back on track in terms of having a federal character? Very simple. Just comply with Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution and get back involved with the enumerated powers and stay on track with what those powers were to allow the government to do, and we will start eliminating that national character we have. But I've gone one step further, and that step is to create something I call the American Government Reform Plan. I have gone to the USA.gov website where you will find the many hundreds of federal institutions, federal agencies out there that I have gone through each one of them, and I have identified in essentially 4 categories: either elimination, realignment with another organization, turning over to the states, or offering up for a nonprofit organization. That's the 4 categories we put into. Within the first 3 years, and you'll see each one of those, that's about 25 pages long, by the way, okay, in Excel to go through that, to be able to see each one. But one of the things I've done for you is where you see red, guess what happens with it? It's gone. So it makes it real easy. You see what's blue realigned, what's green, gets put wherever, okay? The first 3 departments to go, number 1, you can guess, what's it going to be? Department of Education's gone. Absolutely. Department of Education gone. It's been nothing but a thorn in the side of the United States, and frankly, a thorn in the side of the peoples of this country. And we see what it does to add to corruption every time we have teachers that try to change grades, teach to test in order to be able to get those federal dollars. I don't think we've seen any improvement in education. You and I got to be very smart people without having a Department of Education when we were growing up. The second one to go is Department of Housing and Urban Development. Period. Take those properties, turn them over to the state, that whole operation, let the state decide what they want to do with those as far as keeping them or letting them go. The third one usually surprises people. This isn't all. This is just to get it going. Give me a plan out there. Department of Labor. Department of Labor. Why the Department of Labor? Because the Department of Labor holds a monopoly over the states as far as the states being able to do what is best for them to get employment up, to get their states to be prosperous again. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind in here what goes on within the National Labor Relations Board. In fact, it took a Supreme Court decision to change the folks that President Obama recently put in there to say that that was illegal, what he did essentially. Okay? Department of Labor. And what I'm doing is I'm taking these organizations that are out there that actually have a monopoly over the states and getting rid of that monopoly. Which brings us to number 2, restore state sovereignty. If we do number 1, get back to the federal character, start getting out of the national character, get back to the enumerated powers in the Constitution, then you will start restoring state sovereignty. Madison told us, didn't he, I think in Federalist Paper number 39, that the powers of the federal government are to be few and defined. Those are the states, numerous and indefinite. In fact, he said that really the only time the federal government's going to have any big interest is in times of war and in commerce, of which commerce would be the one that we would focus most on taxation, i.e. consumption taxes. Government does not allow businesses to have a monopoly over other businesses. Why would we allow government to have monopolies over the state? It makes absolutely no sense. So what we want to have is 50 individual entities out there that have the ability now to use their own motivation, use their own initiatives, look and see what is best for them in order to determine what's best for the state. And when each of the states start determining what's best for themselves, will that not in turn fix the nation? I believe it will. Absolutely.
The government does allow businesses to have an outfit through cronyism.
That's true. That's very true. The third one you'll see on there is restore state sovereign. The third one there is to restore the sanctity of the Bill of Rights. Okay? I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that the Bill of Rights have been under attack. And certainly the one we hear about quite a bit is number one with religion, number two in terms of our right to bear arms. Did you know Alexander Hamilton waited to the last Federalist paper, number 84, to talk about the Bill of Rights? He was against them, and for all the right reasons. He said that a Bill of Rights would even be dangerous. It would call for a colorful pretext to claim more than was granted. And he was exactly right. In the founders' belief, we could get rid of the Bill of Rights, and it changes nothing. It puts no additional restrictions on you, and it adds no powers to the federal government. It simply identifies more of the restrictions on the federal government. So Hamilton was of the impression that the Constitution isn't of itself a Bill of Rights. You get through, you can get rid of 1 through 10, and as long as you apply the Constitution as it was to be applied, you can do it without the Bill of Rights. But fortunately, we have the 14th Amendment, which makes some of those Bill of Rights now applicable to the states. And then we got the federal government, we got the state government, okay? So we got to be careful about what goes on in the states as well, too. So the 14th Amendment actually did something good for us to make sure that those did apply down in the states. The fourth thing that we want to do is we want to restore fiscal responsibility and accountability. There's no question in your mind that we overspend this government today and have been for many, many years. It goes far beyond looking back, President Obama, President Bush, or Clinton, or Bush before him. It's been going on for far too many years. How do we get responsibility back? Number one, get back on the enumerated powers. Spend the money on those things that you are authorized to spend your money on. The second thing we have to do is balance the budget. Well, guess what? I've got a balanced budget I put out there for 2015. You can go and look at it online. Not only is it balanced, but it has a surplus in it. Using the expected tax revenues for 2015 that the government had planned at that point in time. The third thing that you have to do to get responsibility back is that we have to construct a debt reduction plan, just like you would have with a mortgage, okay? A debt reduction plan, and we must comply with it. That way, we will start reducing our debt. You know, everybody talks about today in the government about reducing our deficit. As though, and unfortunately, there's too many people out there that really don't understand what a deficit is versus a debt. Okay? Can you still hear me okay? I brought this down because I was hearing a little buzz in the back. We don't want to reduce just deficit. Reducing deficit still means that our debt's still growing. We've got to reduce the debt, and we need to have a schedule to do that. As far as accountability goes, we need to have the laws, rules, and regulations that anybody in government, if they misuse the people's money, they need to be held accountable to the extent of both criminal and civil penalties, period. In the military, if I expended the taxpayers' money incorrectly, used it to my own benefit, I could, as you probably were trained too, having been in the military too, I could be held accountable. I could have been court-martialed. Why is that not true of other individuals within our government? We have to have accountability. That's going to take leadership, though, to make sure that that, in fact, does happen. The fifth thing we need to do is restore our economy. The two ways we're going to restore our economy. Anybody in here businessmen and women?
Theoretically.
Theoretically. You know, you're a preacher, too, and a very good one, I must say, as well. I'm a historian. There you go. But the economy, there's only two things you got to do. Okay? Although the problems go. The first one is you got to deregulate. Bottom line. Okay? We can start at the federal level, and a lot of that goes back to number one. Get back to the enumerated powers, and a lot of that regulation will start to take care of itself. Okay? The second thing is taxation. We have to eliminate income taxes, payroll taxes, corporate taxes, capital gains taxes, alternative minimum taxes, estate taxes. All those taxes need to go away and get back in line with what the founders had planned for this nation, and that was consumption taxes, and that is the fair tax, a national retail sales tax, which is really the centerpiece of my platform. It makes all the other programs that I put together out there possible because of what it will do to stimulate the economy beyond any income tax today. I don't care if it's a flat tax or a graduated tax, you will not achieve with any type of income tax what you will achieve with a consumption tax. If you think I'm wrong, look at the state of Texas, income tax only, growing leaps and bounds. In fact, Rick Perry's up there in Matthew's home state all the time trying to bring businesses down to Texas. Governor Scott's starting to do the same thing down in Florida, which is another sales tax only state. And I come from a state that's a sales tax only state, and it's starting to prosper again. My state was hurt a little bit more there in Nevada because we depend upon our gaming industry. People have a disposable income. That went away for a while. But now it's coming back, and so the state is really starting to rebound. Gaming industry. Yeah, there you go. Entertainment. We call it entertainment.
It's all entertainment.
Yeah, it's all entertainment. So those are the things that you need to do. Here's the problem that you have when you're talking about an income tax. Any kind of income tax. Number one, it penalizes productivity. The more money you make, the more you get taxed. There's going to be people who tell you that that's immoral. And I think there's a certain truth to that statement too, because that money represents your property and it's being taken away from you. And here's another thing too. Did you ever think about when you're the people that you work for, if you work for someone else, that they are forced to seize your money and they are forced to take your money as a tax collector for the federal government without any compensation? That's wrong. That's just wrong. Now what happens if, there's a lady I was reading an article about a while back that did that very thing. She set it up where I'm not going to pay on behalf of my employees, but I'm going to work with my employees and make sure that they pay every tax dollar, every payroll tax that they owe. She did that. 100%, but guess what? FBI comes in, seizes her bank account. You are guilty before you are proven innocent. We have got to change that. We've got to have a Bill of Rights, if you will. We have that within the fair tax, and that is one of the ways that we are going to get the economy fixed.
It's a form of slavery because you're working for no compensation.
Right. Absolutely.
They take your money away from you. You're working for nothing. That's against the Constitution.
Absolutely. So one of the things it does is penalizes productivity. The second thing it does is it incentivizes non-productivity. How does it do that? Well, we have folks today that are living below the poverty line. In many cases, they're getting back more money than they pay in both income and payroll taxes. What happens when they cross the poverty line? Now they start getting penalized like the rest of us. So what's the incentive? Be non-productive, stay below the poverty line. So it incentivizes that, at least income taxes incentivize being non-productive. Okay? Oh yeah, you probably even thought to yourself, why would I go get another job? It's just going to raise my marginal tax rate, so why should I be more productive? Why should I contribute more to America? The other thing that it does is it obstructs savings and investment. Important to each of us because it's savings and investment now that makes money available for corporations to borrow and be able to grow their corporations and grow their businesses. So it obstructs that. And then the other thing it does, and I'm hitting on these just very quickly. You could go in all kinds of detail. We could talk as long as the Internal Revenue Code, its rules and regulations, which is now over 74,000 pages today. Over 74,000 pages. Our bill, HR 25, is only 131 pages to wipe out subtitles A, B, C, and H of the Internal Revenue Code. That's all it takes to get it started. Okay? Almost as easy as it was in the beginning. But the fourth thing that income taxes do is that they indirectly subsidize foreign nation corporations. And how do they do that? You'll see that when you go to your favorite discount store. Okay? Because that discount store is going to have products sitting on that shelf that came from nations that did not have the heavy tax liability that we have in this nation. They didn't have the huge income tax, they don't have the huge corporate tax and all those other taxes. So they can ship it into this country and put it on the shelf where now their product gets to compete with our domestic made products that have huge tax liability on them. That changes under the fair tax. No more corporate taxes, no more income taxes. Now products go on the shelf, they have the same sales tax assessed to them. So now they're at least equal at that point in time. So fixing the economy is number 5 on that one. The next one that we have, number 6, yes sir?
Sorry, Kerry, I was just going to say, not only do we have the highest corporate income tax, but we tax foreign income, which no other country does.
That's exactly right. When our nations have corporations overseas, they can tax that income as well. But we also have a thing too, and in fact, we just recently had Metatron. Some of you may have heard of this. Metatron just moved to Britain. I think that's where they went to. They're one of the largest producers of medical equipment in the nation today. They have, don't quote me on this, but I think it's around a 30 to 33% effective tax rate that they figured out, having moved the headquarters, which means they put it in the back room of some building, call it the corporate headquarters. Now their effective tax rate has gone to 5% or less. Why would they do that? Well, they're doing that because now, first of all, one of the big things is for their investors. Their investors now are going to be able to get more money back. Sure, they're going to have to pay more tax because they're getting more money back, but it's a bigger draw now to invest in that company. Okay? So if we get rid of corporate taxes, just like we're getting rid of them by losing our companies, why don't we do the same thing and invest in this country? So very, very important. Let's see, the next one that we have on there is the restore individual financial responsibility. I have put together a plan called the American Security Reform Plan where we will terminate Social Security, but you and I will not see the end of that Social Security. It's built in a plan where we have an age group when it's implemented from 60 to 65, that group's protected. But what will happen is when you get enrolled in, and you can go back and read this whole plan for yourself. It's not really that long, maybe 3 or 4 pages. But we even put a graphic out there to show you how these computations come together. Bottom line is we raise the age to 67 and we immediately stop any further credit accumulation. Okay? So those that are 14 years of age and got at least 4 credits in 1 year towards their Social Security benefits will still be able to get some benefit, which will probably be a payout down the road. What this means then is once the program is fully implemented, you got your last year group that had no impact to them. Then you got that next year group that has the first impact. When they turn 67, they'll have their benefit automatically reduced 5% from the previous year. If there's any COLA to be added in, it'll be added in at that point in time. If they got their 40 full credits, it's multiplied times 1. If they only got 30 credits, which would be 75% of the full benefit, then you multiply that times 0.75, and that gives you a figure of what your benefit will be. So as we get to a younger and younger generation today, they get a decreasing benefit. But guess what? Social Security is nothing but a wealth redistribution program anyhow. Why is it? Now that we're paying almost 20 cents on the dollar out of the general fund for Social Security. It's unsustainable. We're paying people that didn't pay into the system, which means if you're receiving Social Security today, I'm one of those that's going to be getting it not too far down the road, it means you're being denied part of your benefit in order to give it to someone that did not pay into the system. You know, I think back when Rick Perry in one of the first debates, he called it a Ponzi scheme. Well, people call it a Ponzi. It is not a Ponzi scheme. It's not a Ponzi scheme. And then, unfortunately, Governor Romney didn't jump in and defend him and help him out and try to correct him on exactly what it is. It's a government program, okay? Government programs are unique. They're unique. They're not like a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi scheme you get into and out of. Try to quit paying your payroll taxes and see what happens, okay? It's a government program. It doesn't work exactly like, well, I'm not even going to call it a Ponzi scheme because the fact is that I would be attacked for calling it a Ponzi scheme. But if I called it a government wealth redistribution program, I in fact would be correct. Did you know there's over 2,700 rules for distributing Social Security today? Why is there more than 5? Why? It shouldn't be that way. It just shouldn't be that way at all. I've written a plan on how to deal with that. Next thing we have to do is to restore our healthcare industry. I've written a plan. It's called the American Medical Reform Plan. If you look at every government program out there today for healthcare, it focuses on demand-side economics. Medicare Affordable Care Act. Increase demand without an increase in supply. What happens when we increase demand without an increase in supply? What happens to the price? goes right up. So when our congressmen and our senators and our presidents stand up and say, you keep your plan, it'll be the same price, it's impossible. It violates Economics 101. It simply cannot happen. So I've written a plan that actually increases the supply of doctors. Today, we only have about 20 to 25,000 doctors, if my memory serves me correct, that are graduated each year and go into the medical field. We are way behind in terms of what we need, and it's widening in terms of what we need. Okay? What we have to do is we have to start educating our doctors, and I put together a plan that will provide for that education and get those doctors out there in terms of $40,000 a year. That's having completed 11 years of schooling. That means there's 440,000 students in school, and any one time, full scholarships. Guess what? We can do that for the actual scholarships themselves, excluding the administration of it, less than 5% of what we pay in Medicare today. Put them out there, let them go into drugstores, for the drugstores or the discount department. This is already kind of happening in some cases. We'll provide them the real estate, if you will. Now you have a doctor who has no student loan debt. He's probably going to have his set of capital provided for him in some cases, not in every case. That means the savings is passed on to you. Plus, there's going to be more of them. 40,000, we're talking about a 60-something% increase over there. Almost 100%, really, depending upon how you want to play statistics. There's lies, they have lies and statistics, somebody once said. Depends upon how you want to play those percentages. You put them out there, and when they start competing with each other, which today they really don't have to compete. The demand is there. You got the money, I'll take care of you. We're seeing more and more doctors go to concierge services. Here's one thing that's really disturbing. Suicide rates of doctors are high. We can't afford to lose doctors that way for sure, regardless of how they're contributing to the economy. Take a look at the American Medical Reform Plan. It's a new idea. It's a different way of doing things. It meets the people's demand for medical service. It's really a medical care, unlike the current system that is just a tax system. I asked my wife the other day, I said, what if all the doctors went away? Do you think they'd still make us keep paying our payroll tax? Okay. Medicare and the Affordable Care Act does not guarantee you a doctor. It only guarantees that you will pay tax. My program is to provide a doctor, make the opportunity greater, and you be able to get in through better tort reform, or it includes tort reform, and one of the big things we put in there, putting more of the liability on the patient as opposed to on the doctor, okay? And expanding our insurances so the borders become transparent, if you will. The borders go down between states as far as insurance goes, because that's another area where we are robbed the opportunity of competition and free enterprise to get our insurance rates reduced. Number 8 is going to be immigration law enforcement. My first priority is to carry out Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution, which says that the President is to carefully execute the laws of the United States. Whatever laws are in effect, that is what I will execute. Period. Make there no doubt about that. But I've also put together a plan. He's given me a time limit back there, so I'll hopefully throw it in if I can.
Add something to that. Article 4, Section 3. The President shall protect the states.
There you go. Okay? Now, I've also put together a plan, where we have congressmen and senators that keep talking about a 10-year plan and then hee-hawing this and that. I put together an 8-year plan, and I encourage you to go and read that. Essentially what it does is within the first 6 months, every illegal resident of the United States has to sign up to get an heir of what I call an American Immigration Reform Card. It gives them the ability to be able to get a job, pay taxes, but it is not a Social Security card. To pay restitution to the people of the United States for the first 3 years, they will not get deductions, exemptions, and credits allowed under the tax system, or if you got the fair tax, they would not get the family consumption allowance at that point in time. At the end of 5 years, assuming that they have been on good behavior, that they did not have anything other than simple misdemeanors, at the end of 5 years, they now have 3 years to get their citizenship. At the end of 3 years, if your citizenship, unless for some mental incapacity, you have not got your citizenship, be processed for deportation to your home of residence, so to speak. Very straightforward, very specific, provides restitution to the American people, gives each and every one of us an idea of where we're going, how long we have to get there. And another important thing about this plan is that those that are here illegally, you cannot safe harbor anyone, because if you safe harbor anyone, you can lose your opportunity to gain citizenship and you'll be deported. So that means that those that are here then will actually work with law enforcement to ensure safeguard their opportunity to get citizenship at some point in the future will be safeguarded. I have two strategies in that. Two strategies for this plan. One is called opportunity restraint, and the one's called fiscal restraint. We've got to secure the border first. It's got to be done, period. Okay? The other one's called opportunity restraint. Other than coming here to do bad things to our nation and sell our kids drugs and that sort of thing, they come here for opportunity. Opportunity restraint means that, I like the E-Verify system, you've got to have some kind of system. Okay, to verify if you're the appropriate, or if you're supposed to be here, as well as monitoring those that have come here on visas and that sort of thing. But under opportunity restraint, if you as an employer or whatever provide safe harbor or employment to an illegal resident, you will be subject to criminal and civil penalties. Period. We have to have the American people engaged in this as well as those that have come here illegally. The last two things very quickly. Number 9, restore truth and integrity in government. If we do number 1, we've got a big part of it done. Number 1 being getting back on the enumerated powers, balancing our budget and spending our money only on those things we're supposed to spend it on. Period. Truth and integrity. It will come with the execution of the previous 8 that I've listed. And then the last thing in there, having done the previous 9, is going to be to restore the faith and confidence of the people in their government. If the government is doing only that which it is authorized to do, then the people cannot have contempt for me or cannot have contempt for the government, Congress or the Senate. They can only have contempt for our Constitution. And if they don't like our Constitution, there are other options available for them. Okay? And it doesn't include residing in this country. All I'm trying to do is get us refocused on that Constitution, and in doing so, I believe that we will restore the faith and confidence of the people in our government. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I like to leave my folks that come and attend these little events with me is this. It was not one president nor one party that brought us to where we are today in this nation. But I can assure you that one president, and I don't mean that to be just me, but the right president, whomever that may be. I'm going to support that person, and I certainly hope you do. But the right person in that office, it's got to be in the executive office. It's not going to happen just with the president of the Senate. It's not going to happen with the Speaker of the House. It's got to be at the presidential level. The right person there can, with your help, put this nation back on the track from which it has for too long and too far departed. And with that, I thank you very much. I think my time is up. I think even reading your Constitution, I'm 4 minutes over 7:20, I think. Thank you all so very much.